All right, so today was like a stormy, rainy day. I just kind of spent my time today in the shop. So there's a build, well, a couple of builds that I want to get into, and I have like 4 projects that need tweaked on. So I wanted to work on getting these tweaks done, getting these 4 projects a little closer to being like finished before I get started on anything new. So that's kind of what I was doing today, is just making tweaks. So if you're kind of curious to know on a couple of these projects what the progress might be, this might be the video that you want to see. We're going to kind of go over these 4 projects and kind of tell you what I did. So up first here would probably, I might as well, since it's sitting here, this is the one I just finished. This is the Echo 590. So we built this saw. It's a 2-piece. It's a custom head. But even though it is a custom head build, it still has like a hotter firewood numbers. We didn't build it to be like a super screaming race saw. It's just like a hot, really hot, kind of hot firewood kind of build. But I've been having tremendous amount of issues. Like one day it'll run, another day it won't. Things like that. I've already gone through 2 coils and I'm still running into the same issues. So I ended up actually putting a 460 carburetor on it, trying that, and I was still having the problems. In fact, I actually felt like it ran better with the stock. Sorry, I didn't put a 460 carb in, I put a 372 carb in. But I ended up feeling like it did better with the stock carb. And I think I had some problems with that 372 carb, so I ended up going back to the original carburetor on it. Problem is, whenever I did the modification, putting the 372 carb in, I had to modify the choke linkage. And now that I got the original back in it, the choke linkage will not work. So I need to replace the choke linkage with an original set of choke linkage. And this saw should be pretty much done. But I have done some other tweaks since the last you saw. This thing is not running the stock air filter setup anymore. I've installed the low top 372 air filter. So let me kind of give you a quick idea here. You see this little bolt? That's what's holding the air filter cover on. This knob, this original knob, it's JB welded in place. So I just pulled the nut off since the air compressor is running, and you'll see that I can just pull this guy off now, and we got a 372 low top air filter installed. I just had to drill out the holes at the elbow. I was able to put my screws in and hook everything up. And she fit right in there without any modifications. I think I have removed some plastic here previously, so I don't know if you would have to do that if you chose to do this. I can't remember. But I basically just drilled a hole through the elbow, put a bolt through, and ran a nut on and bolted like a bolt to that elbow. And then I ran another nut about halfway down that bolt as like a stopper, so that whenever I put the air filter on, I put this air filter on and I tighten this nut up, it has a spot to stop and it doesn't just keep sucking it all in. You know what I mean? Now I did get in and work on the carburetor some too. I've never blocked the governing circuit on this carburetor, so I went in and I just went ahead and blocked that governor. The carb has still had like this hesitation to it, so I blocked the governor just to see if that was the issue. I cannot fire it right now because that JB weld is still wet. So a little bit of updates on this 590. Oh, sorry, the biggest change of all. So all those issues of me trying to get it started, I may have figured it out. I think it's either a kill switch related or a ground issue, and I'm leaning towards the ground. So I was in here trying to figure out what was going on, and the spark just did not look healthy at all. So I ran a ground wire from one of the head bolts to the coil and basically grounded the head and did not rely on the head bolting to the cylinder with the gaskets and stuff like that to give me a good ground. And as soon as I did that, sorry, I did that, and I was playing with that ground wire at the same time while checking the spark. But as soon as I was done playing with that stuff and put it all on, I went to try to test fire it. It fired right up and ran perfect. So I'm suspicious that I didn't have a good ground between the head and the cylinder to give me a good, strong enough spark to make this thing run. And it was being kind of intermittent and here and there and all that stuff. But only time will tell. I mean, she fired up today. We'll just have to wait and see as long as if my problems of it, being kind of erratic go away. You know what I mean? So she fired right up today and ran perfect. So we're gonna have to wait and see how she goes. So, next project. So this is a Pull and Wild thing. Last year at Sawfest, we competed in their Wild Thing contest and we took first place. Well, Charlie Briscoe built that saw and I decided I wanted to build my own version. So I converted this saw to run on methanol, and it is now a reed-fed engine. So I got rid of the whole piston port thing, set it up with reeds, converted it to methanol. In fact, I just got done JB welding, so I was running into an impulse issue. Actually, I could do that right now if I wanted to. I was losing impulse as RPM increased. So I basically installed an additional impulse coming out of the transfer. I'm having trouble squeezing this thing on. I'm going to try to see if this helps to solve my problem. I think just something with the way this saw is with the methanol needing as much fuel as it needs and all that stuff. I don't think the impulse coming through the crankcase, through the reed cage and all that stuff was quite strong enough to get that carburetor to pump enough fuel at high RPM. So I ran out of impulse out of the transfer in the hopes that because the transfer is so close to the action, at the pressure differentials and all that stuff, I'm hoping that by adding this in here, it will help keep me from losing impulse. This is an experiment, I guess you can say, but I'm hoping it works. So we're set up that we have an impulse fed out of the transfer now, and the original impulse through the carburetor stuff is still intact. So I guess technically we have 2 impulse feeds on this saw now to this carburetor. And next step is testing and seeing if we can get it to run at full RPM and get it to pump the fuel as needed. So that's where this project is at. This is it was just a little JB Weld job, and it's been sitting here for a long time waiting for me to do it, and I just hadn't done it. So I finally got her done today, So this is going to be something that I need to test soon. Make sure I get her all tuned up and everything. And as long as this works, we'll be moving on to the next step at bumping up and getting it to consume even more fuel and start throwing some other stuff at it. So this is basically, we're trying to get her running good and steady on the reeds and alcohol. That's kind of where I'm at in this step of the process, and I want to take it further, but I need to get this part of it running good before I try to take it further. So that's where the Wild Thing is at. This is my Husqvarna 61. I ended up almost ripping this freaking recoil off. Let me pop that back in. There we go. I'm missing the screw right here. Let me see if I got one laying here. There we go. Little hammer action. Let's see if I got a screw laying here. That'll work. All right, so we got that screw in, but that's not the repair I really needed to make. The carburetor's been acting kind of funky on this guy. Full throttle's been fine. Pretty much everything else has been screwy. So pulled the carburetor apart today, and I found that it did have a governor circuit. So I JB welded it shut, and we're gonna see if that works. That's pretty much all I did to it today. In fact, she's almost ready. I just gotta put the air filter and air filter cover back on, and I can't fire it until tomorrow, but that's pretty much where this guy's sitting. She's almost ready for a test. She runs great at full throttle. It's just everything else, just, you know, she's a little funky and everything else. She was a little hesitant coming off the throttle and just acting weird, you know what I mean? So I figured a good place to start would be to block off that governor. This project's been a headache, or been a challenge. I mean, we changed out the crankshaft to a more modern style, which it changed out the type of clutch setup we needed. We discovered that because of the changes we made, the timing was different, and I forget what the circumstances were, but we couldn't use the original flywheel. So I figured out that a 372 flywheel would work on it, and I went with that. But the timing of the flywheel was different. So I have been behind the scenes. What you haven't seen is I've been playing with the timing of it, working on getting it set just right. And right now, I think it is really close. So before long here, you're gonna see a dedicated video to this saw. We're just gonna do a full dedicated video on it, test run, so you can see how she's doing. I'm just waiting for the JB weld to dry right now from blocking off that governor. And hopefully that cleans up a lot of my carb issues. So, because the governor, the way it's set up is that you're basically getting fuel full time into the crankcase that is not governed by, or not controlled by any jets. So I blocked that off, so now 100% of the fuel flow is governed by the jets. So hopefully it doesn't need that fuel to tune. Hopefully the fuel that I get past the jets is enough to make her tune up. You know what I mean? But she's ready. As soon as I get that JB weld to dry, we'll be ready to give this guy another test. And we'll do a full video on this one. This is the next one. He's a filthy mess. I had it sitting here and I dropped like a thing of dirty water and it freaking went all over it. She's a filthy looking mess. This is the 372 big bore kit saw that we built. And we've noticed issues with it at full throttle. She has a pop, reminds you of four-stroking. So a few viewers and myself, we've all kind of talked behind the scenes and on the comments and stuff. And it's pretty, I don't know, we're all kind of agreeing that it's probably pre-ignition and my timing is probably running too early. So today I backed the timing off, and hopefully, I mean, we're going to test it here soon, but hopefully just the timing was too early. So I got that tweak done today. That was the only thing on this saw that I've been having issues with. The sound of it was weird. It sounded weird when it was running and all that stuff. Just, I don't know, especially at idle. And after I backed the timing off, it started sounding a lot more normal. In fact, we can fire this one up. There's no JB weld on this one. So I can actually fire this saw up for you and show you. It seems to have calmed down a lot on the idle. It goes to full throttle better and everything. So I think it was a timing issue. I think we were just running too early. So we backed her off, and let's go ahead and fire it up for you so you can see what I'm talking about. She sounds pretty healthy now. Sounds a lot better than it did before. Now the choke, I lost the choke. So I've just been reaching in here with my fingers. There we go. I mean, once it's fired up, who cares, right? I can reach in there. I do use a compression release on this guy. So there you go. She sounds better to me. Feels better. It's plenty snappy off the trigger and all that stuff. So we'll be testing that saw here soon. I think we figured it out. Just needed to back the timing off a bit. And, you know, I'm kind of curious to see how she runs in the cut. Right now she feels very fat after I backed it off. I don't know, the free rev and all that, it just seems like it's a bit on the fat side. So, you know, we're going to find out once we put her into wood. You know what I mean? Now, another thing we're going to add on here. That was the 4 saws that we were tweaking on today. But there's actually 6 saws to talk about. I'll just mention, so Joey was here to help me with that outside furnace. And he gave me an 026. So, you know, I've talked about it in the past. Gave a story about how a previous employer and stuff, I had 3 saws. I had an 026, an 036, and an 046. Somebody broke into the garage and stole all 3. So I decided a while back that I would work at slowly replacing those 3 saws and building them and porting them and all that stuff. Well, we got the 036 from Briscoe that's ported. I did acquire an 046, but it's kind of like an 046, an 044, and a 460 kind of hybrid thing. You know, it's an old saw, so it's had parts replaced, and it's got like a mix of everything. But I have not worked on that saw to port it. Heck, we haven't even made cuts with that saw since I got it. So it's just been sitting on the shelf. But one of these days we're going to build that one. And Joey brought me an 026 whenever he came to help me get that outside furnace. He got it from a guy who took it to his shop, and the shop told him that it wasn't worth fixing. So I did get the saw to fire up, but it sounds like it's got a lot of piston slap and crank issues and bearing issues and everything. She sounds like a freaking, like a paint can, like a rattle can, paint can in there banging around and slamming. That's what that saw sounds like when it's running. So we're gonna, you know, it's gonna have to be tore down and do a full rebuild on it and brought back to life. But, you know, one of these days we're gonna do it, and then we'll have those 3 saws replaced and back into my lineup. You know what I mean? An 036, an 026, and the 046. So pretty stoked about that. But then he also brought the 372. This is that Neotech clone that I built for him. You remember? We not too long ago, we did all the videos on it. So he got me the saw. We had to do everything. It needed the crank. I mean, absolutely everything. Crank, top end, it all got done. So we built him a pretty nice saw to go out there and cut wood with and everything. And in fact, it's actually a little bit on the spicier side. It could be spicier, but we built it a little bit more on the spicy side. And I'd say it's probably 75% there. But we could definitely take it further, you know what I mean? But he decided that, I don't know, he took it home. He had it for a couple, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, and he decided to bring it back. And he's like, nope, this is your saw. This was always your saw. I'm like, what, you didn't like my port job? And he's like, no. We kind of got into this little joking argument where he's like telling me how it was always going to be my saw ever since he got it. That he just wanted to go through the process. And I'm like, what, you didn't like my port job? So it kind of turned it into a joke driving down the road while we were going to pick up that furnace. talking about this saw. But yeah, so the 372 Neotech clone is back. And I guess it's mine now. So, but I mean, if Joey ever wants it, he just take it. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm attached. You know, if he wants to take her, he takes her. We'll probably play it like that. Sometimes it might be in his possession. Sometimes it might be my possession. But right now it is in my possession. Complete rebuild on this saw though, everything. And I did it mostly with parts that I had laying around. They were used parts. The crank is new, but I mean the top end was used parts. You know what I mean, and all that stuff. Now we can actually fire this guy up too. So let's go ahead and fire this up. This is just it's a spicier firewood build, I guess you can say. This one does not have a compression release. I'm probably gonna change that. I gotta order some for the 372s. I like compression releases. So there we go. I like that saw. It actually runs pretty well. Feels really nice in the hands. Good, solid, idle, all that stuff. You know what I mean? It turned out really nice. We might actually take it to Clone Wars this year. We'll see. We might. In fact, both of those 372s might end up at Sawfest this year. So we'll see how that progresses. The only other thing to speak of is I finally picked up a 346 top end. I'm going to do a conversion. I'm going to convert my 350 into a 346. Been talking about doing that for probably a year or more. I just never got around to it. And I finally bought the top end. But we'll see how long it takes for me to get started on it. It's a project I've been wanting to do. The 346, I feel like it's the ultimate saw to have for, in that, you know, size for racing and stuff. The 550s are really popular, but I don't know. I got a feeling that a really well-built 346, I don't think a 550s can keep up. You know what I mean? I think the 550s are going to kind of all settle in kind of in this part in like your list of finishers or whatever. I think the 550 guys are all going to kind of settle in, but the guys who hang out on top are going to be things like the 346 and so forth. I've been working with the Partner 5000, which is a classic build, like a vintage build for racing and stuff. And I think the 346s will still be able to destroy that Partner 5000 stuff. And I have a 350 here that I'm going to throw the 346 top end on and see what I can get out of it. You know what I mean? It won't be a true 346, but it'll be, you know, it'll be something. Something to do, something to play with. I never broke down and actually bought a 346. Maybe someday. You know what I mean? But for now, we're going to turn that 350 into a 346. The only other thing is this home light project I've been wanting to do. I've still been looking for the parts I need to get this saw together, and I'm struggling to find the exact combination of parts that I need to get this guy up and going. I was hoping to have them done by June, and I don't know if it's going to work out. I might have to scrap that whole idea. You know what I mean? Until I locate the stuff that I need. I thought I had them here. I thought I had them on other saws, and here I was freaking stealing the parts off other saws, and it happens to be parts that I need for this one. So we'll have to wait and see if I figure it out and get to find stuff. I mean, there was a whole pile of junk right outside of this building with totes and totes of saw parts and stuff. I was going through that today. So I still got more to go through. I might end up finding what I need in there. So we'll see how it goes. Right on the other side of this wall was going to turn into my firewood like shed type thing. And I'm over there working on cleaning it up because That's basically where my drunk pal's been. Well, I mean, when we first moved here, the whole perimeter of the building was junk pile. And I've cleaned up the upper half and the back half. I'm now working on the worst end, which is down here. So it's almost done. Another couple of hours and it'll be done. And then we're going to start working at moving that into like the firewood storage area. So whenever we cut up our tracks of logs, it's all getting stacked right on the other side of this wall. That's actually what I spent most of the day doing today. But it started raining, so I came inside and started playing with saws, you know what I mean? But we're going to see how a couple of these projects turn out before we get into building another project. I don't know what it's going to be. The 395 is on the list. I was hoping to do that home light, but it might get jumped. So we'll see how she goes. But the 395 is on the list. I mean, there's several others we could get into, like the 046 or something. But yeah, we're going to do a 395 like race build, and it's sitting there just waiting. I got all sorts of projects that I can get into, you know what I mean? But we'll have to wait and see how she goes. So, hey, I hope you enjoyed this one. My screen says 30 minutes. So let's see if we can get that edited down to closer to 20. Alrighty, so we'll catch you on the next one. Later.